It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. Show is brought to you by Audible.com. Go to audibletrial.com/Opperman Report. Sign up for free. Get yourself a free audiobook. And help support the show. I'm going to call our next guest tonight, Ted Rubinstein, so I can get him on the line here. Fascinating guy. Lived with Dave Emery. Helped him out with his show. Did a little work on the Mae Brussels show. Worked with Larry Flint.
Hello?
Hey, Ted.
Yes.
Hey, how are you? It's Ed Opperman. You're on the air.
I'm on the air right now?
Yeah, you are, man. How are you?
All right, great. I wanted to ask you a little about the Sharpton thing.
Okay.
Because I know a little about that, maybe less than you, but there's some kind of angles that you didn't get into.
Shoot.
First of all...
Wait, I tell you what. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell people who you are, a little bit about your background, and then
okay.
Yeah.
My name is Ted Rubinstein, and I've been investigating what I call parapolitics, which is actually a term probably invented by Peter Dale Scott, which is like shadowy forces that influence the body politic that aren't talked about much in the mass media, but that are very significant, like secret societies, organized crime, intelligence agencies, drug trafficking, money laundering, black money, all that stuff. So I've been studying all that since about 1975, and I can tell you how I got into it. I know you're interested in the fact that I knew Mae Brussels and lived with Dave Emery and worked with Larry Flint and all that stuff. But I couldn't help but listening to all you're saying about Al Sharpton and taking a lot of notes.
Okay, shoot. What do you want to... let's talk about anything. Who cares, right? So,
right.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I like your show. I can see you hit a lot of bases, to say the least.
Yeah, I'm trying. Yeah, man. Yeah. So
okay, so first of all, you didn't know how many times this guy has visited the Obama White House. Like, I think it's like once a month if you work it out.
Yeah.
Like every month he's over there.
Yeah. A huge amount of times. And just think about it. The guy's a full-time FBI enforcer. The guy was meeting with huge guys. Ianello DeCroce. You know, this guy was meeting with huge mafia guys. You know?
Okay, I want to ask you one
heroin
thing.
dealers.
Now, I know quite a bit about Francisi.
Yeah.
Michael Francisi, the born-again preacher who made millions of dollars, and we don't know where that money is at, but he fooled the government. He was supposed to testify against all these people, but he pulled the wool over their eyes, and basically they didn't get squat out of him. That's the story.
Yeah.
Now, my question to you is, when he was operating with Sharpton and Michael Jackson, which I didn't know that he was involved with Michael Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
I knew that Al Malnick was involved. I didn't know that Francisi was involved. Was this before he started cooperating with the feds?
Yes.
It was.
It was, but when he was hanging around with Sharpton, though, that's when he did that big $100 million oil scam that they had going on, where they weren't paying, where they weren't paying a tax on the oil and the gasoline and stuff like that. And you're right.
Well, that's what they went after him for.
Yeah, and there's none of that money is accounted for.
And he jokes about it, saying, where is it?
And one of his partners who's in prison says, they ask him where the money went, and he goes, well, it's gone. He goes, where did it go? On a date?
So I don't know if he really got over on the feds like he said he did or not. But it's all very strange, and I think this Al Sharpton thing is all of a piece because of his strange connections, and he is all good, even though he's an FBI informant. I mean,
Well, another thing about Frances, though, is he got that deal because he sought out the prosecutor who prosecuted Henry Hill.
And what's his name?
I don't have it off the top of my head, but he's
McDonald?
Yeah, McDonald. You're right, exactly, McDonald. Yeah.
All right. Okay. I don't want to get off on Henry Hill. He was in the same rehab I was at, but I don't want to get
really?
into that.
Okay.
Let me ask you about the thing. I was confused about the thing about Jesse Jackson.
Yeah.
Now, you said that Jesse Jackson was kind of his patron in the early days?
Yeah, Jesse Jackson set him up to run Operation Breadbasket in New York City, like 1971. What was it called? Yeah, he was a youth director of Operation Breadbasket, yeah.
So this is before Operation Push.
It was around that same time. I don't know what Jackson's organization was called at that time.
The operative part is you were indicating later that he sort of turned against Jackson and was involved in publicizing this what was it, a rape allegation?
No, with Jackson had a love child.
The love child.
Yeah.
So now, do you see this as a split between the two?
Oh yeah. They've been split a long time.
Okay, but now, arguably, I guess I'm suggesting here that this is the power struggle among the controlled black leaders, if you will. And this is not an area I like to go into because I don't like to speculate about people's motives when I don't really know it. But I think there's enough that's been raised about both of these guys that I think it's subject for discussion. And that's why I wanted to mention this thing about Jesse Jackson and how much you know about his role in the Martin Luther King case and what people like Bill Pepper, who's like the key researcher on all this, he defended James Earl Ray.
Sure.
What he and a lot of others say about Jesse Jackson's suspect role in that whole episode. This is how Jesse Jackson became known, and it wasn't exactly kosher, if you will.
Yeah, and there was a lot of FBI, involved in the murder of MLK, And
he rushed to Chicago to get on the air with King's blood smeared all over him. It was an obvious PR effort to position himself. William Pepper is furious about the whole thing. William Pepper, in case people don't know, was the attorney for James Earl Ray, who's now passed, and for now in the RFK case, he is the attorney for Sirhan Sirhan to try
I'm trying to get him on the show. Yeah, do you know?
Prove that there was a second gun, et cetera, et cetera. And William Pepper goes way back to when King was alive. He was a friend of his, and he commands a lot of respect. So, if he is raising serious suspicions about Jesse Jackson's role, I pay attention.
No, I'm trying to get him on the show,
Good for you.
I know. Do you know him? Trying to get everybody on the show.
So anyway, you were wondering why you think that Sharpton is trying to get these things investigated by the feds because he himself is controlled by the feds.
Yes. So and he always tries to get the feds to come in and take over.
But don't you think? I mean, let's say giving him the benefit of the doubt. Let's say that he is what MSNBC represents him as.
Yeah.
They're not going to get justice in the local or the state venues. So I think Sharpton is saying that maybe they'll get justice with a civil rights thing, which involves the feds. The only way the feds can step in is a civil rights violation.
Yeah, but the problem with that is it fails every single time.
Well, that's true too.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're not going to get any success under Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch, or are they not what they seem to be either? I don't know.
No, well, think about it. What has Eric Holder done for us? He's
bad news. I definitely think he's bad news.
Yeah.
And I think the left likes it. I think the left as a whole tends to love him.
Yeah, I think because we see a black face and we think right away, oh, gee whiz, he must be one of the good guys, And
right, that's kind of how it works a lot of the time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, so that's some of the questions I wanted to ask about Sharpton and Francis.
Yeah.
The Don King thing. He's another one who's in the same boat as these other guys. Gets away with murder because he has apparently a good relationship with the powers that be and the feds and so on. He kind of dances through the raindrops also.
Yeah. literally got away with murder. He killed somebody, you know. And right before he was about to go away to prison, they got the judge out of bed on a Saturday morning, and they gave him a acquittal or whatever.
But you say that they used Al Sharpton against Don King, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
That could have just been, to get a feather in their cap, and they don't really care who it is.
Have you read the smokinggun.com, all the documents that they have up there?
I've seen them, but I haven't taken the time to read them. I just know that this, it's talk about a smoking gun. It is.
Yeah, and they did a great job, man. Their investigation, they did a great job on it, man. Really.
Yeah, and I know that one of the guys that he was involved with was this Daniel Pagano, who his relatives are still involved with bookmaking, but in upstate New York.
Yeah, Pagano was one of the guys he sent to that music producer's office to strong on him for the money.
Yeah.
So, are you from New York?
No, I am not. But I like the fact that you have all these New York connections in the things that you relate. Because I have to say that the way I first got involved in all this stuff was through the efforts of the Yipsters and A.J. Weberman.
Oh, very good.
And seeing the tramp photos in the Berkeley Barb and just being totally stunned by that in 1974, 1975. And that's what got me started in my interest in the JFK assassination.
Yeah, me too, pretty much, man. It was the Yipster stuff and Yipster Times and Overthrow Magazine. And like you said, when you saw those tramps, and saw that picture, it was like, whoa, there's more going on here. But then look at AJ.
And the ironic thing is now that we know that they probably weren't Hunt and Sturgis, but nevertheless, there's all these connections between Watergate and the JFK assassination that you can't ignore. I mean, it's all connected. From the Bay of Pigs to Watergate and beyond. Iran-Contra,
Yeah, it's a small group running all this stuff, man.
The drugs is always front and center.
Yeah. Now, what do you make of Obama?
I'm very conflicted about him. I don't know what I can't say that I've actually gone through the work by Wayne Madsen, which is supposed to purport to prove that he's somehow connected to the CIA. I don't know, I don't know what to make of all that. On the one hand, I see him as committed on some hand to a lot of socialist ideals, and yet I see him in the tank with the banking interest. I'm totally baffled by the guy, I have to say, and probably I shouldn't be, but let me get your take.
Well, obviously his paperwork is no good. His history is no good, There's got to be a reason for that. And the two people who I know that met him, Cindy Sheehan and Cynthia McKinney, both think he's CIA.
Ah.
Yeah.
Well, I certainly think his efforts were promoted by someone in powerful interest. Now, I do find it very interesting that they don't talk about this a lot, but apparently one of his big influences behind the scenes is Brzezinski.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, Brzezinski's son, when he was his what do you call it, his white paper guy? When he was running for president, his policy papers. Yeah, Brzezinski's son. Yeah.
Well, I see him. I don't know what to make him. I see him as playing kind of a sophisticated role, but ultimately, it's not a good one.
And interesting too that both the McKinney and Sheehan described his arrogance. That in person he just has.
Oh, absolutely. I know. Yeah. No, I totally get the impression that he is arrogant as all get out.
Just amazing.
And it really galls me the fact that he has this arrogance on top of this kind of detachedness. Like he'd rather be doing March Madness or playing golf, and yet he has this kind of cynical attitude towards everyone who disagrees with him.
Yeah.
He has this consummate hubris. Like, this thing, like, I don't want to get into the Iran vote, because I'm not really that down on Iran, but apparently 98-1, they're voting against him, and yet he doesn't care. He really is the imperial president.
And even when he was running for president, it was like, oh man, I got something to do. I got to get out of here. Yeah. He wasn't even paying attention. Oh, God.
But ultimately, I'm very cynical, I guess, and I do think we get the leaders we deserve.
Yeah.
Ever since 1963, I'm afraid that seems to have been the case.
Well, how old are you?
I am 62.
Oh, wow. Okay, you look good. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay, no, you look really good. And where do you live now?
I live in Palo Alto.
Okay, very nice. Okay. And okay, you've seen a lot, right? And what do you make of because I got the FBI agent coming on with the anthrax thing, right?
Well, when's that?
A couple of weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, like 3 weeks. He's a cool guy too. He's really nice. He's suing the FBI.
He's what?
He's suing the FBI.
Oh, is this Ivins?
No, Lambert, I think his name is.
Okay, now I'm not up on that as much as I should be, and I know that Dave Emery has followed it pretty closely, but I can't say that I'm not familiar with the anthrax stuff.
Did you follow AJ's work on the anthrax stuff?
Which AJ?
AJ Weberman.
No.
Yeah, AJ, he was convinced that some neo-Nazi guy was behind it. And AJ went off the rails stalking this guy really bad. There was lawsuits going back and forth and restraining orders and everything.
Well, he's always involved in lawsuits with one person or another.
I know. Hey, you want to laugh? You know the story about the time that AJ took the hostage next door at Studio 10 when he took, I think it was Ramdam, the private investigator? And
this is something that I must not know about. This doesn't involve Mordecai Levy.
I think it was right. It was Mordecai Levy. It was the JDL guys. It was Mordecai Levy and Ramdam, the private investigator. And they went to serve AJ with some papers over at the across the street, Studio 10. And AJ had it rigged in the lobby that if you came in, he could see who was coming in. And if he didn't like you, he could lock the doors and set off tear gas. You can't make this stuff up. So he sees him coming with these papers. He recognizes because he's fighting with Ramdam for years, And he locks him down and he's tear gassing him. There's a police standoff like 12 hours, the hostage, negotiators, the whole deal. No one gets arrested. Okay. No one gets arrested. Hey, you take hostages. Okay, tear gas. Okay. No arrest, right? And then the funny coincidence is that I ran into Ramdam a few years later, like around 2000, and I wanted to say to him, "Hey, man, my friend took you hostage." I didn't have the balls to do it, though, man.
I've heard rumors though that Weberman does have some sort of Israeli government connection. Do you know anything about that? Is that possible?
I do not know anything about that, and I know he listens to the show, and I don't need any problems. I don't know, man.
He's got a problem with me because I went after. I criticized him because he said John Lennon was nothing but a junkie, and he also came to the defense of Sarah Palin. Now, you come to the defense of Sarah Palin, who shoots wolves from helicopters. Yeah. I'm going to come down on your ass.
Yeah, I didn't hear the thing about him defending.
He listens to the show.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I get a little nervous too because every now and then, I'll see Pinterest. AJ Weberman following me on Pinterest.
All right, I don't want to get into this with you, but believe me when I tell you this: the JDL elements and the Kahanists, they are on Facebook threatening to kill me and some of my Facebook friends.
Oh, really?
And, it's just blatant. They make up all these lies about me. They threaten to kill me and my friends. And we were able, usually, to get these pages taken down. But the last one, Facebook was really obstinate about. They really wanted to keep it up there. It was run by this group called Labor Zionism.
Oh, yeah.
Spelled with a U.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I think, my suspicion is they kept saying that we're not going to take this down and stop reporting it. This is a blatant threat to kill me. And anyway, finally, I called a reporter for the San Jose Mercury, and I think they might have called up Facebook because after that they finally took that page down. But anyway, so these people, I say, the JDL elements, Jewish Defense League, and the Kahanists, I don't take them lightly because I've seen what they supposedly stand for.
No, I hear you, man, and I try and get along with everybody. I really do.
I do too. And these people pick fights with me for no reason.
I know. Let's see. I got to put up a hashtag on TalkStream Live. What should we call it? JDL Hit Squad.
Honest.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And see, the thing is, it's ironic because Mayor Kahana,
Yeah.
he was murdered by the network that was responsible for 9/11.
Right. People don't know that.
The blind sheik that the CIA led into this country. I mean, I have no love for Mayor Kahanis, but you look at who killed him and how it ties into the overall picture. I mean, this is very important stuff.
Yeah, you're talking
about
right.
Everything ties together.
You're talking about the first World Trade Center bombing.
Yes.
Right. And
have you read Peter Lamps?
No, but I want to do a show about that, okay? Because I know the whole story from talking to these
Yes.
guys. Because all those guys, the JDL guys and the JDO guys, knew everybody involved in it. It was the same guys that killed Kahana. It was the same guys that shot at that bus full of yeshiva kids.
But now they weren't in league with each other. They're enemies. I mean, I'm not going to say that somehow they're collaborating. But see, the FBI bungled the Kahana case. They kept saying it was a low nut. And their failure to get to the bottom of the Kahana assassination led to them not stopping the World Trade Center plot.
Yeah, but
which
then
actually involved their agent,
right,
Imad Salem, who, this guy was really smart. He didn't trust them to the extent that he recorded them while he was meeting with them. And if you remember the story, they finally decided they couldn't work with him anymore for one reason or another. They let him go, and then the bombing happened, and then they ran back to him and wanted to employ him again.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, you know. And we got to do a show about that because, and it makes sense because the FBI didn't want to stop these guys when they were shooting Kahana. They didn't even stop these guys when they were shooting that bus full of kids. You know, they wanted that, I guess, right?
Well, this is a repeated pattern. Supposedly, they always want it to happen. Like, look at this latest guy. What's his name? Simpson out of Arizona?
Yeah.
The FBI is saying, yeah, he was on our radar, but we couldn't do anything about him because there's too many guys like him. And yet they got this NSA project where everybody's being spied on, and they can't. And yet someone is with alerting all these red flags like this guy they can't act against because there's so many like him. I mean, this stuff is just incredible.
Well, where do you land on that? Do you think that because you've been around a long time, so we were talking about the NSA back in the 70s, right? Now, but now all of a sudden everything's NSA. I think I think it's the FBI PR department that put out this NSA crap to get the heat off of them, you know, because what do you got now? Everyone talks about NSA. No one talks about FBI. What's the FBI doing now? Drinking coffee? They're obviously...
But the NSA, they're a different department. Yeah. They're involved with the communication stuff, sucking up everything that's out there, you know? The FBI is a different department. But I do agree that that these agencies, you know, they pass the buck and they blame each other. But I think ultimately it's the United States people that are the enemy.
Yeah.
They don't. I mean, you mentioned the Village Voice, but the Village Voice has done chapter and verse on all these incidents of terror that the FBI has sponsored in one way or another. These plots would never have gotten off the ground without the FBI encouraging these so-called lone wolves.
Yeah, that's so true, man. Have you done any work on Ted Gunderson?
Oh, yes. Okay. Okay. I know all the charges against him, and I know some of the people that are for him.
Yeah.
And my first suspicions about him were aroused when I was in touch with certain Scientologists that claimed that, oh, yeah, he was COINTELPRO back in the day, but he's still serving that function now.
Right.
So I just put that in the back of my mind and said, well, I don't know what to make of that. But since then, the whole thing with Danny Casolaro and the octopus scandal happened. I don't know how much you know about that, but one of the main intriguers who apparently is considered possibly the guy who murdered Danny Casolaro, his name is Robert Booth Nichols, tied to the mafia and the Gambino crime family and the CIA, This was all written up in the L.A. Times in 1993, so it wasn't just in fringe sources. The L.A. Times had a huge story when he went on trial for, I think he was busted for bringing a gun into someplace, and so the L.A. Times had a big story about the allegations about Robert Booth Nichols. But anyway, the bottom line is, it turns out that he was a real good pal of Ted Gunderson.
Okay.
So when that was confirmed to me, I realized that Ted Gunderson is a pretty suspicious individual. So what do you think about it all?
Well, I'm working on it. I want to do a whole series of shows on Ted Gunderson. I'm willing to talk to anybody on pro or con of Ted Gunderson to see what they say. I can
What about Stu Webb? Stu Webb apparently is his main adversary.
Yes, well, they live together, and I know Stu Webb, and I don't think Stu Webb likes me, to tell you the truth. I think he has his own...
He doesn't like you.
Yeah, I don't think he likes me. I think he's okay.
Well, I have to say about him, he's a big Jew basher, and a lot of these guys, that's their territory, and in some way you get used to it. But, no, I'll never trust him completely. And plus which, when he says that Rostenkowski took over the crime syndicate from Al Capone, sorry, that's not true.
Okay.
So I know that he says stuff that is factually untrue.
Well, I
see him as a big. I know a lot of other these people. They tend towards Jew bashing. I'm always on the alert for that.
Yeah.
Although I have no problem with criticism of Israel because I think that's well founded. So anyway, I don't particularly love Stu Webb, but I definitely am very suspicious about Ted Gunderson. Rest his soul.
Well, I'll tell you a couple of things. One is I just had a client very recently, and she said to me, she goes, "Oh yeah, I was down at the FBI office, and I ran into Ted Gunderson." And I says, "Well, he's been gone from the FBI for years." And she goes, "Oh no, this was about a year before he died."
Oh my God!
Yeah, so he was down there. A couple other things too. We can get into this all night. But I knew Ted Gunderson. We did PI stuff, and he always wanted me to. He had this thing where he wanted me to do tapes for him. He had these videotapes or audio tapes he was trying to sell, and he had it in his head that I was the guy to do it for him. I don't know why, but it never came to fruition.
Well, that's what a lot of the criticism I hear, that he's into making money one way or another.
Yep.
Now, they say that about Alex Jones, and there's nothing. We're in a capitalist society. You got to make a living. I'm not going to fault that entirely, but what you say about Gunderson doesn't exactly add to his. He doesn't exactly burnish his credentials.
I hear you. Yeah, and I'm trying to make money too. I'm hustling here, trying to keep myself off the street. And, again, a couple of things with Gunderson too is when he had that lawsuit with Art Bell. He told me, because I tried to help negotiate that settlement, and he told me, he said, "Oh yeah, my errors and omissions insurance is paying for this."
That was what?
His errors and omissions insurance for your PI business.
Yeah.
And and I listened to him, and I said, okay. And I didn't think anything of it, but I have errors and omissions insurance, and I know that they're not going to pay for anything I say on the radio. And then I found out later on that it was his FBI insurance that paid for that lawsuit. Now,
the bottom line is, were those charges against Art Bell, did they have any foundation?
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. No, I think what happened was Art Bell's son was molested in school by some weird school teacher down there that actually chained up his kid and took him across straight lines and then raped his kid. And, I was with that whole thing. I was a witness in that lawsuit, and I helped negotiate the lawsuit against David John Oates back in those days. And then I did such a great job with that. I thought, hey, let me call up Ted Gunderson and see if I can negotiate this. But that didn't go as well because he just wasn't. He was out of it, and I think a lot of it too, But he just wasn't concerned about it at all.
Well, how familiar are you with the so-called octopus affair?
Not, I never really got into that. No, I know a little. I've heard the name Danny Castellaro a million times. It kind of makes me nervous. The people who I hear bring it up are not kind of the people that I give a lot of credibility to. But give me an idea. What is it?
Okay, Danny Castellaro was an investigative reporter that he cultivated certain sources that led him on the trail of what he called the octopus. And it was a whole concatenating series of scandals and circumstances involving organized crime, the secret government, what was going on Indian reservations, secret technology, training of the Contras, drug trafficking, the gold coming out of the Philippines.
Right.
It was this whole raft of, as I say, concatenating events. And he was like in over his head. And finally what happened was he was in a motel room in West Virginia, and he met with a source. And after that, he was found dead in the bathtub with somewhat slit wrists, and his briefcase gone, towels soaked with blood outside of his reach, and his body was instantly cremated without the permission of his family. His family was very suspicious of all this and said how they'd been in contact with him, and of course they tried to float the notion that he had MS. He found out about it, and he was very depressed, and his investigation wasn't getting him anywhere. So he took drank some wine, and took a Tylenol 3 with codeine or something. And anyway, that he slit his wrists, and nobody bought it, but they got by with it. And there were some good articles about it, some really revealing ones that said, that no question about it, this was murder, this guy was really onto something. And then some of the articles were more like, one of them even went so far as to suggest that he committed suicide in such a way as to make it look like murder in order to tweak the conspiracy theorists to talk about it way long after his death. This was by Ron Rosenbaum. But anyway, the bottom line is he was really onto some really important stuff that still reverberates to this day, including October Surprise, with the keep the hostages contained after the election of Ronald Reagan. Anyway, he had all these connections between all these scandals, and basically, very few people believe that he was murdered, especially since his briefcase went missing after that. I mean, that it was suicide, after that. Now, everyone thinks he was murdered.
Now, wasn't that something about Promise software that could...
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that. Oh, my God. Thank you for mentioning that, because I was just listening to Indira Singh, who is one of the 9/11 whistleblowers, who blew the whistle on something called P-Tech, which involved terrorist financing and drugs, and also involves the story of Sybil Edmonds. But anyway, she said that the Secret Service asked her, is P-Tech different than Promise? It was a very, very interesting question. Now, Promise, and thanks for asking, Promise was basically at the heart of the Octopus scandal. And what it was some case management software that was designed to track complex criminal cases. It was developed by these pair called the Hamiltons, who ran a company called Inslaw. And they tried to sell it to the Justice Department, but the Justice Department outright stole it from them. And then it was the subject of a big suit and an investigation by the Senator Brooks subcommittee. And now, I was in touch with some of the investigators of the Brooks subcommittee, and it was one of their investigators that told me, actually he was a reporter. He was a reporter that was in touch with the committee. He worked for the Fresno Bee. He's the one who told me that Robert Booth Nichols was most likely the main suspect in ordering the killing of Danny Casolaro in the motel, but it was too politically sensitive. They were never able. They didn't become public with that charge that they felt that Robert Booth Nichols was the killer. But anyway, it was established by this committee and by the judge, whose name was Basin, that basically the Justice Department did in fact steal the software from the Hamiltons and Inslaw. And I believe that there was a quote from the judge where he said, "I can't believe what the government is not denying about this case." I mean, it was so blatant. But it's also so complicated and obscure that the news media generally ignored it. But yes, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is at the heart of the Danny Castellero's octopus, and it does directly trace to the 9/11, because this was only briefly discussed, but apparently the Promise software had enabled them to target Air Force One. And this came up briefly in the investigation, and then there was no other mention of it. But apparently, yes, there is again there's this trail that I'm mentioning. Almost seems that everything connects to each other. Yes, the Danny Castellero's octopus does relate to the 9/11 events.
Now, wasn't there something though about the Promise software too, where it took a penny out of everybody's account or something? No.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
There's a backdoor. What it does is it allows a backdoor capability.
Yeah.
So they sell it to various governments, but meanwhile they can find out what these other governments have in their databases.
Gotcha.
And apparently it went all over. It went to the Israelis. It went to various European countries. It went to various government agencies. But yeah, it was all a result of government malfeasance and thievery, and they named the people that were involved in all this, that profited from it, like Earl Bryan, were all named. And there's a great book about it called The Last Circle, if you want to check that out. It's probably the best book on the whole Danny Castellero's octopus.
So you think it's worth doing a show on that?
That more special that focus on him more directly, but yeah. I always try to tell people that in order to understand what's going on now, you need to not only understand the Kennedy assassination and the events of the assassination of the 60s, but also things like the October surprise and the Danny Castellero's octopus and the drug trafficking and all of it. Yeah.
Well, October surprise. Do you think that John Lear was the pilot for that?
No, wait. No, John Lear's not involved in October surprise.
Okay.
That was the alleged pilot was Günter Rusbacher. And I think he was brought into the thing to discredit the whole thing, because Günter Rusbacher had no credibility.
Okay.
He tried to claim that he took George Bush to the meeting with the Iranians, and he was basically discredited. And a lot of people thought, oh, well, the October surprise has no merit, but Robert Parry is the guy who's done most work, more than anyone in Consortium News, and he's basically documented it, that, there's little doubt that it happened, but no. There's a lot of disinformation around it.
Now, so then you would recommend me doing a show about the Promise and Castellero and all that kind of stuff?
Oh, absolutely. And I could recommend some guests, like the woman who wrote that book. Her name is Sherry Seymour.
Yeah, do that, yeah.
Or Ken Thomas of Steam Shovel Press. He wrote a book about Castellero for...
Yeah.
Was it Sparrow House?
And
his document, I think they did. They didn't recover the briefcase, but they did recover a bunch of his other notes, and those have been published. So we do know a lot about his investigation, but it's as I say, it's interesting to see what has happened since then that ties into all those events.
Now, in your bio, you took the point to say that you don't. Something to the effect of you don't like frivolous investigations. You're not. What is it? You're very cautious.
Well, I don't like grandiose theories.
Yeah, cautious in methodology, and not given too far out there is good. I appreciate that, because there's so much nowadays. My God, something happens and there's a video 10 minutes later that it's all a hoax, and look, they're not reacting the right way.
Well, and also, I find that things are sensationalized and exaggerated to the extent that it turns to discredit the entire thing. Like with the thing with Bush, I don't know if you know about Bush and the Kennedy assassination.
Yeah. What do you think of that? Yeah,
The Family of Secrets by Russ Baker, which is a really sober look at all the questions about the Bush crime family. And yet it gets lost in all this discussion about, was Bush in Dealey Plaza, and was Bush the mastermind of the plot? People tend to lose the forest for the trees. And that's my big gripe with a lot of what goes on in the research community.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. Give us another example. What else do you see out there that's making you nervous these days?
Well, all this emphasis on what other gun was found in the book depository, and what did the Parkland doctors see as compared to the Bethesda doctors, and you can argue this now until the cows come home. I just don't see it. Doesn't really get us anywhere.
Yeah.
But I just look at to believe that the government was telling the truth. You just have to believe in the most nth degree of coincidences and government bungling. Even if you think that Oswald did it, how do you explain the studied indifference towards him at every turn?
The only guy who's ever defected to Russia comes back, happens to be in a building right by the president driving by, and no one checks it out.
But they gave him money. They gave him $435 to come back, which is a lot of money in those days.
Yeah.
His brother paid it, but he was able to pay back his brother in short order on what was he making? He was making nothing. There's just so many things. The Mexico City, we know for sure that somebody was using his name, impersonating him.
Yeah.
The FBI agents listened to that tape and said that's not his voice.
What do you think about people nowadays saying that the Zapruder film has been tampered with?
You know what? I'm agnostic on that.
Okay.
I'm agnostic on a lot of things, and that's one of them. I can see both sides of the argument, but I don't think you really need to go there in order to make a cogent argument. But I can see why people do.
Yeah.
But I guess one thing that bothers me is that when people try to talk about it's a lone nut that did it,
yeah,
it really isn't a lone. They're talking about two lone nuts, Oswald and Ruby. And they say, "Oh well, Ruby said he wasn't part of any conspiracy, and no one was able to prove that the mob told him to kill Oswald."
You don't believe that.
Well, he made enough hints in various interviews that he was being used for a purpose, that he was part of a conspiracy, that LBJ was involved. He never talked much about the mob because I think he knew better.
Yeah.
But
well, it's interesting too.
One thing that the Kennedy assassination got me really into was organized crime.
Okay.
And I don't think organized crime controlled the plot, but I see them as an integral part of the whole thing. And especially when people ask me, well, what's the bottom line as far as you're concerned? I tell them, to me, the key is the unholy alliance between the CIA and the Mafia, which ostensibly just involved the plots to kill Castro, but I think it goes a lot deeper than that. It's a very long historical relationship. I think it involves drugs, all kinds of stuff.
The one thing with the Lee Harvey Oswald getting shot coming out of the police station is when you see that cop right next to him with the big, beige hat, the beige coat, and he's holding on tight to Oswald. When that shot rings out, that guy doesn't flinch. He knew that shot was coming, and he's holding him up, man. He's holding him up to get shot, So yeah.
And now he's saying that he saw Ruby with the gun. First he didn't say that, but now he's saying that he was cognizant of the fact that Ruby was holding a gun. But the other person who didn't show much reaction was in front of the old guy, whose name now escapes me, was Will Fritz. I mean, if you look at Will Fritz's reaction, he was totally unperturbed when the shot rings out. But you know what I find really galling about that whole thing is that Ruby, he tried to get out of the whole thing. He was apparently ordered to do it, but he then called up the Dallas Police Department and said, "We're going to kill Oswald."
Oh, really?
The guy recognized his voice, and after he said, "That was Ruby's voice." So Ruby was even trying to get them to stop him, apparently, and they didn't. I mean, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it really is, and it kind of started everything,
It did.
Got the whole ball rolling, yeah.
Yeah.
and set the
in
world.
my mind, it has. It all goes back to 11/22/63. I hate to say it.
So true. Now, you never lived in New York, though.
I did. Well, I lived in Scarsdale for
Okay.
2 years.
Because you remember Alan Combs on the radio on WABC in New
Well,
York
I
City?
still listen to him occasionally. Yeah, what about him?
Does he still talk about JFK?
I've never heard him mention it. Why? Well, what does he ever say about it?
Okay. Oh my God, Alan Combs is an incredible expert on every detail of JFK assassination.
Oh my! I guess I listen to him a lot, but I've never heard him broach the subject. I'm gonna have to call him up now.
Call him up. I would be interested to know if he's still willing to talk, because everything went to Fox News. I never heard him ever mention it again.
Well, what was he saying when you heard him?
Oh, he knows every little detail. He knows every little detail of everything. This is way back in the 70s and the 80s in New York City. And
is it because he read books or what?
Read books. He would do shows every year on the JFK and talk to all the conspiracy theorists and all the authors and Dick Gregory, and all those guys, all that kind of stuff. But
and he was devoted to the conspiracy.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Oh, absolutely. And also, too, I used to hang out at the comedy clubs in New York City, and he used to MC the comedy clubs. And he would sit there and hold court and discuss, in detail the umbrella man, and every little, the raincoat woman. He knew.
That ruined Mort Saul's career by getting all fixated on what happened to JFK. And they say, well, poor Mort Saul, he was so obsessed, and it ruined his career.
Yeah. See, things were different back then. Now it's. I was talking to a guy yesterday, and he was saying how it's entertainment now. And as they've kind of manipulated us into accepting. We were hypnotized before into thinking that, hey, our government's real and it loves us and it's here to help us. God bless the flag and salute. And now we're hypnotized into believing ancient aliens. And it's all conspiracy.
Well, I think we're hypnotized into not seeing how it all ties together. It's like, on the one hand, people, apparently, they would do these polls, how many people think that JFK was killed by a conspiracy, and, it'd be like 70%. And then they would ask them, who do you think was behind the conspiracy? And then, at least 50% would say they thought it was the CIA. But they don't seem to be able to, and Gates and Fonzie commented on this, they don't seem to incorporate what does it mean if you think the CIA killed the president to how you see the world and what's going on today. Because there's a disconnect there.
Yeah.
I'm not expressing it very well, but it's like everything is kind of compartmentalized in the public mind. Probably so that they don't have to act on what they know. And I think that's what Gates and Fonzie was trying to say, is like, they know it on one level, but they're not convinced of it in a level that would cause them to do anything about it. Because they don't really want to do anything about the situation that we're in. On one hand, they feel helpless, and on the other hand, they don't know what to do.
I know.
What do you think?
I know what you're saying, because I got to get up and go to work tomorrow.
Right.
You're right, man. I have to reject the idea that the CIA killed Kennedy, and that they're running the government, they're all dope smuggling, pedophiles.
Ultimately, what do you do about it?
Yeah, well.
But I think it's incumbent upon us to at least make other people understand what we know, and to think, to do something about it within the realm. On Facebook posts don't amount to much. But
just
whatever organizing people can do, I think it's very important.
But people
and don't succumb to the helplessness and the hopelessness.
But on the same hand, people have no problem arguing all night long, back and forth, about whether Obama's a communist and Mitt Romney is or whatever. When they're practically identical, and they will fight with a passion that if we have Obama, we're going to have Sharia law. And if we have Mitt Romney, we're going to have a corporate takeover. Whatever. I don't even know what they're complaining. But the thing is, they're so identical. And they will fight with that over a passion, But here's something, hey, look, there's some real stuff here, guys, and nothing.
It's such a limited political discussion that we have in this country, too.
Yeah.
Or when it comes, whether it's economics, whether it's, the secret government, it's like certain topics, and I think someone was saying this about Bernie Sanders. Like Bernie Sanders says, we can't talk about whether the rich are paying enough taxes. What kind of society is it where people are worth $35 billion and people are afraid to talk about whether they should be paying more taxes?
Well, they'll even say, "Oh no, we have to be nice to them because they'll leave the country, and they'll take their money with them, and they create the jobs." But what do you think of Bernie Sanders, though, man? Because I'm hearing it's a total sham.
In what respect? I mean, I think he can't win, so in that case, it's all this is all moot. But no, I haven't heard that he's controlled opposition, if that's what you're suggesting.
Yeah, and I heard it pretty well laid out, too. As a matter of fact, in I think one of the groups that we're involved in, the woman's first name is Deborah, and she's from Vermont, and the last name is Blair.
Is she in the Laurel Canyon group?
Yeah, definitely. She's in there, yeah.
Those people, I hate to say this, but those people tend to be kind of wiggy to me. They're kind of like way out there. So, if someone suggests that Bernie Sanders is, he's controlled or, it's true he doesn't talk about 9/11, but no, go ahead with what this person is suggesting about him.
Well, she goes into some serious detail because he's not even from Vermont, the guy's from Queens or something, Brooklyn.
I know he's Jewish.
Yeah. The thing is, I don't think they went on that rant, but the thing is, when you look at the Ron Paul role in the last election and how he was definitely the most popular, he won every debate. There's no doubt about that.
He's the populist candidate.
Yeah, but still they kind of rubbed it in our face and says, yeah, you know what? He is the one you want, but watch this. We're not going to let him, and then he made some kind of deal. He got his kid he got his kid a job in the Senate. He's running for president 4 years later. Ron
Paul, incidentally, is rather pro-Israel.
Yeah. the kid's totally different, than the father. Yeah. So I kind of think
Dave Emory used to rail about Ron Paul and the fact that his newsletter was printing stuff that was pro-KKK.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It doesn't really resonate with me because what I mostly did was contrast Ron Paul to the other candidates, and in contrast, he looked good despite his faults. Now, but Rand Paul, I'm not so sure about. But Bernie Sanders, he looks good to me, but he can't win.
He looks good to me too, yeah. But I think they might. I think enough people might vote for him, but they won't count the votes. They'll let us see that the people voted for him, and they'll say, "Oh no, those votes don't count." No. He's not going to be president. Sorry, tough luck, guys. Because I think they do a lot of stuff like that just to mess with us. Like one thing that always struck me, right? And this may sound crazy to you, right? But here you got this whole thing. The most evil man in the world is Osama bin Laden, right?
Yeah.
Bombed the World Trade Center, kills puppies, does all this stuff. And then who do we elect for president? Barack Obama. The names rhyme. Like, how could it's like, what kind of a coincidence is that? How is that even possible?
Well, to me, that suggests that psychological stuff doesn't really amount to much.
Okay. Oh, that psychological stuff, yeah. But it does seem to be some kind of a mind freak on us. You know what I mean?
Well, a lot of people seem to think that that's an operating factor. But I'm just, I don't know. To me, the evidence seems to suggest the opposite. That it doesn't matter that Osama's name was similar to Obama. People clearly saw a difference, and I supported him too. I mean, I was all gung ho for Obama at the first, but the second time around, not so much.
Okay, so you're one of these guys that think, okay, we can vote out the rascals and we still have a hope of and a chance of something with the democratic system doing something for us, and we can vote somebody in that's going to care.
Well, when you put it that way, I have to say no. But I guess I can be played for a sucker.
No, man, listen. there was
But,
something.
this to me it was historic. We've never had a black president.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll be better, but ultimately I was disappointed.
You know what? And I got to admit that I debated on Facebook, and even though I knew that nothing was going to change, I knew Gitmo was never going to close. I knew we were never going to stop these wars. Nothing was going to change. The same bank's going to run everything. But I would still debate that, somehow he's better than Romney. I don't know why, but I did it.
Yeah.
And I got all upset, and I'm dreading this, man, and we have to go through this again. And what are we
You
going to
mean the Bush crime family versus the Clinton crime family?
Are we really going to debate that there's some difference?
I mean, God, as I said, did I say before about getting the leaders we deserve? I mean,
Yeah.
God, do we really deserve this?
And what are we going to debate? Oh, she deleted emails. She, Benghazi. People don't even know. Half the people who talk about Benghazi, they don't even know it's Libya. They don't know Benghazi's in Libya. Oh my
boy,
God!
The whole Libya thing. Boy, was that a cynical episode.
Yeah, right.
I mean, yeah. But Gaddafi was basically cooperating with us.
Yeah.
Getting rid of his chemical weapons, not supporting terrorism, and then we undermined him anyway. And then what? And then we stood by while he was brutalized with a broomstick.
Yeah.
I mean,
and his kids.
And then and Hillary Clinton laughed about it.
Yeah. Oh, we went there and we killed him.
Yeah.
Oh my God! And now you're familiar with the whole thing with Wesley Clark, right? About how he says that the whole plan in the Mideast is to cause chaos and disruption and have
7 countries that were targeted.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and there it is, right in front of us.
Yeah. But most people don't know this stuff, and I don't know even if they did, would it make a difference?
I don't think so, because you can tell them, and it doesn't seem to last very long, too, in their head, Even when they agree with you, they'll come back the next day and they're back to the same thing all over again, which is one reason why I did the Al Sharpton show, because everyone, recites the same crap about Al Sharpton no matter how many times you tell them. The guy's FBI. And the guy's GOP. The guy's run, interference,
Well, I do think it's helpful to focus on characters like him.
Yeah.
Look at what they're up to, look at their background, and look at what they get away with, and what does that say about the broader picture. It's very useful, I think.
Wait, real quick, we're down to the last minute. We have more time. You and me can hang out if you want. We're going to be dropping PSN and Talk Superstation. So if there's anywhere people want to get a hold of you, a website or something like that you want to promote?
Well, no, I can just point them to my Facebook page, pretty much.
Okay. And Ted Rubinstein's Facebook.
Ted Rubinstein. Look for the Owls. RUBINSTEIN. I really don't have a page apart from that, I'm afraid.
Gotcha. Okay,
but
so
I would like to make friends with everybody and then communicate with anyone who has questions about what I've said or so on.
And you're mostly in JFK type boards and stuff like that, groups?
Yeah, but as I say, I'm really into the larger parapolitical issues like the 9/11 and drugs. I just don't know quite as much as I do about JFK, but I love to talk about all that stuff, the octopus. And,
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. You want to take some phone calls from listeners?
Sure.
Okay, great. We're going to take a quick little commercial break here, and we have more with Ted Rubin. You like Rubinstein?
Yes.
No, but you can say either one, though. It's either Rubinstein or Rubinstein, no?
It's Rubinstein.
Rubinstein? Okay. All right, because I'm from New York, and I hear both. Okay, so, all right. We'll be both Rubinstein, Ted Rubinstein, fascinating guy, lived with Dave Emery. I want to hear more about that. And Mae Brussels, and worked with Larry Flint. We got to get into some of that stuff, too, when we get back. I'm going to play some commercials. We'll be right back with more after this.
Oh, I'm glad you're only getting started. Look at all these guys.
Oh, you're not going to talk longer, right?
Oh, what time is it?
How long are you going to do this?
I don't know. I'm with a phone call.
It's gone for hours.
What time is it?
What's the time? 7.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, well, okay, let's say 7:15 and you can And no, these people have to call you on your cell phone.
Okay,
And now a word from our sponsors. We are listener-sponsored, and we appreciate your donations. If you like the show, please visit OppermanReport.com. Hey, Ted, everyone can hear you. And click on the donate button.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Or you can donate
man.
directly
We'll
through
talk after this. You don't have to go. I can call you on a cell phone, or else we can. You can leave.
All right, we might
We have
have
Mike
to do
Ray
that.
of InfinityHomePlans.com. He's the host of Parlay. Thursday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you need custom home designs, stock plans, or 3D work, he's your one-stop shop for home design and drafting needs. Mike Gray at InfinityHomePlans.com. At InfinityHomePlans.com. If you're looking for essential oils, stop by and check out Essentially Tammy on Facebook. She is Young Living Essential Oils independent distributor. Now, these are 100% therapeutic grade oils. They help support the body's natural functions. You can visit her website posted on Essentially Tammy to see the current deals, or email at JockoTammy, JOCATAMI at yahoo.com, or call 352-239-8546. 352-239-8546. Hey, if you need a private investigator, go to my website, emailrevealer.com. We offer asset searches, locates, skip tracing, adoption investigations, online infidelity investigations. We can recover deleted text messages from a cell phone or trace an email to online dating websites to catch people cheating. That's emailrevealer.com, or you can call 800-572-9762. 800-572-9762, or emailrevealer.com, my PI website. Pacific West Bamboo. It's your premier source for construction and craft-grade bamboo poles. They're announcing their latest project with EcoHead Event Sanitation, making bamboo composting bathrooms and porta potties. Their first display will be at the Lucidity Festival in Santa Ynez, California, April 11th to the 13th. Come by and say hi and see what you can build with bamboo. Contact them for any kind of event planning, display building, if you need construction grade or craft grade bamboo products. Call Amanda at 503-839-8126, 503-839-8126, or visit PacificWestBamboo.com, their brand new website. We're also sponsored by the New World Mexican Women. This is a rural Mexican craft women's cooperative. They are traditional makers of fine handcrafted, authentic jewelry. They use beautiful stone mosaics and Pacific blue Abilene inlay. They have a wonderful book of love letters written to their men in the United States, begging them to return to their families in Mexico. But they've written a new book, and it's it's about a young girl that falls in love with a rodeo bull rider and runs off with him without telling her family. It's a beautiful love story called Azucena Part 1, Azucena to the Rodeo. You can find their books and jewelry by clicking on their banner at OppermanReport.com or by Googling New World Mexican Women. You can also promote your business or website right here and have your ad played all over the world 7 days a week by emailing Opperman Report. Okay, we are back with the Opperman Report after show, and we're here with Ted Rubinstein, who's a fascinating guy. We've been talking about a lot of different stuff all over the place. I had a feeling we would. Old-time conspiracy theorist guy. Ted, what kind of stuff did you do for Larry Flint's magazine?
Okay, he briefly had a magazine called The Rebel.
Yeah.
And this is when Reagan was president. And Flint was seemed to be getting a big kick out of tweaking the government at the time. And if you remember, there were two separate times that he offered $1 million reward for who killed JFK. The first time was in 1978 for the LA Free Press, and I wasn't involved in that effort. But then he did it again in 1983, and it was in conjunction with the launching of this muckraking magazine called The Rebel. And this was a weekly magazine, and it was really, as I say, it was a muckraking expose type magazine exposing the wrongdoings of the Reagan administration and the Vicki Morgan episode, if you know anything about that, with Bloomingdale. A bunch of stuff that was coming to the fore at the time. And Flint, and a lot of this is in the movie The People versus Larry Flint. And he was really wigged out on drugs at the time. And he was appearing in court and wearing the American flag as a diaper.
Yeah.
And cursing the judges and, really out of control. And he got sentenced for contempt of court. And he was sentenced. He was put in Butner Mental Institute in the East Coast. And I was in court one day when he was there, and he was just. His lawyers were Jewish, and he was railing about the Jews, and basically, he was just out of his mind. He was like his own lawyers he was throwing under the bus, basically. And he was talking about his organized crime connections back in Cleveland. But anyway, it was a very interesting period in his life. But this magazine lasted about 6 months, and we had a lot of great stuff in there, including the first issue was all devoted to Mae Brussel material, Nazi connections to the JFK assassination. That was before I could join the magazine. I joined the magazine about in the third month or something. And anyway, after all these outbursts, when he got sentenced to jail, and the magazine wasn't making any money, and so his brother sort of took over his operation and basically shut down the operations that magazines that weren't making any money, which included the Rebel. So as I say, it was very short-lived, but it was a very exciting time. And it was also noteworthy for the fact that Flint, he was concerned about his security.
Right.
But he brought in these people that Mae Brussel was basically linking to the assassination, like Gordon Novell and Mitch Werbel and Gordon Liddy. And for some reason, Flint got it in his head that these guys would make good security people for him. And Mae Brussel was just freaking out. These people aren't going to provide security for you. They're going to kill you. Well, ironically, it turned out that they didn't kill him, but Mitch Werbel, who's a major intriguer, ties into all kinds of stuff, he died while all this was happening. But he basically, I think, drank himself to death. But it was a very wild and woolly period.
Well, what about that other bunch, Mensker and Marti?
Oh, my God. Thank you for mentioning that. He had all these... And I'm not that well versed in it, but apparently he had a bunch of black bodyguards and he had a bunch of white bodyguards, but mainly black ones. Now, the ones that I saw that were occasionally at the rebel offices were white. But apparently it was some of those people that were eventually linked to a bunch of murders.
Oh, yeah.
Menser, I don't think I ever met Menser. But yeah, it's just so bizarre. Yeah, that all happened after Rebel magazine was closed down, and I was just like slack-jawed reading about Larry Flint's security people involving all these murders, and it linked to the Manson crowd.
Yeah, and the Process Church and Son of Sam and Roy Radin. Wait, and even too, get this now. I got to ask you about this because, oh my God, if you know about this, forget it. What is that?
We investigated Roy Radin at the time, but we had no idea that it would be involved with Flint's people.
Oh wait,
we did stories about Roy Radin.
Oh, I got to see those stories. Send me those stories if you have.
And it involved the fact that Robert Evans was implicated in the whole thing. That was the hook.
And what do you think of that? I think Evans is up to his neck in that.
I don't know. Apparently he's a big coke freak, but I don't know whether he's involved in the murder.
There were phone calls at night.
It's just amazing that we were investigating this because we heard this thing that there was this murder that happened and Robert Evans was possibly associated, and so they assigned me in to find out who the guy was, and then I investigated a little bit and I found out that Roy Radin was the murder in question. And so we printed what was known at the time, but it wasn't until years later we found that Larry Flint's bodyguards were tied to the whole thing.
And Larry Flint's brother-in-law, too,
Bill Ryder?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who got a sweet deal out of that. As a matter of fact, he got paid by the cops.
What does it all mean, though?
I don't know.
Do you know? Can you put sense of? Can you make sense of it all?
Well, you know, Maury Terry was involved in getting that arrest and getting that whole thing going on there. One question I have for you though is that Menser, and I think it was Marti, or they were involved in another murder of like a 300-pound transvestite madam.
Yeah.
You know that story?
I vaguely know it. Does it tie in anything more?
Yes, because oh my goodness, that woman. Because I read some of the police reports. Okay, that woman was the reason she was fighting with some guy, and they were going back and forth, doing harassing phone calls back and forth to each other and vandalizing each other's cars. Finally, he hires Menser to go kill her, and then Martine, but it's a couple of guys. I don't know if Menser was personally involved. It might have been Martine and another guy, but they go and murder her. But it came up in the investigation that when she was calling up this kid, fighting with him back and forth, she would make like 25 phone calls in a row, then call the Vatican in Rome.
The Vatican?
The Vatican!
Oh, my God.
She would call the Vatican, 10-minute conversation with them, hang up, and go back to call this kid up 25 times.
Wait, she got someone in the Vatican that answered her calls?
I don't know, man. And the cops, in the report, it says, and curiously, she was phoning the Vatican in between.
And what year are we talking?
Oh my God, I don't know that. What put it together? I don't know. It was right. It was before the Radin murder.
You don't want to get me started on the Vatican scandals.
Well, yeah. Well, I didn't mean to bring it up. What do you want to do about your phone number? Can you stay on this phone number? Can I call you on the other number? You want to hang out? What do you want to do?
If my sister gets an attitude and decides that she wants me off this phone, then call me on the other line. But I think we're okay for now.
Just give me a second. That's your sister. I sound like your mom. What are you doing? Who are you talking to? Get off the phone.
She just thought, this is dragging on too long. It's my phone. What if someone important tries to reach me?
Well, what? It's at 7 o'clock. It's late.
But we're about to have Shabbat dinner. And I told them, you're going to have to wait for me to get finished here.
Okay. Well, we can take some phone calls for Ted Rubinstein.
Yeah, please.
702-605-4894. The guy knows about everything. They're hanging out with Larry Flint. 702-605-4894, or you can Skype in at ed.opperman or 702-605-4894. Oh, boy. Okay.
These people at Flint, at Rebel, they didn't know how to deal with Mae Brussels, so they would have me, because she would just go on and on. They go, we can't handle this one. She just shut up.
Yeah, I love those old tapes, man, where you would hear, she'd end the show, and then she'd start yelling at her staff. Like complaining in the background. Were you one of those guys?
Well, sorry, could you say it again?
Because I used to get the tapes, I guess like 79, 1980, and we would get the tapes in New York City. They'd come mailed to us, and you'd hear her, she'd do the show, and then you'd hear her after the show, she'd be like yelling and complaining to her staff and say, well, why can't we get this stuff?
No, I was never part of that.
Oh, so what did you do with Mae Brussels then?
I basically, she would call me up for like advice about things, how to organize her files, and like my organizing system was just terrible. She was calling the wrong person. But she would like call, about, have you heard about this mobster or something?
Okay.
And I had to say a lot of it had to do with, it was around, liaisoning with Larry Flint, because he would sometimes take her calls, but sometimes he wouldn't, and then so she'd go through me and try to get stuff into the newspaper, and she was all, as I said, she was all upset when he started palling around with Rebel, Liddy, and Novell.
Now you met Novell too then, right?
No, I didn't meet them.
Okay.
They went to his mansion, and we didn't get to go to the mansion. We were in the offices, but apparently he was providing their personal security.
Now, what do you think of?
I did eventually talk to Novell just a couple of years before he died, though. But I should have asked him more questions than I did.
Yeah. That guy knew a lot of stuff. Now, what about Flint nowadays? Because I had a thing recently. We tried to sell him some information.
I think he's just kind of. I think he's just not really interested in pursuing any of that stuff anymore. That's the impression I get. Except maybe he seems to still be into exposing, the Republicans when they get involved in their hypocrisies. But other than that, I don't think he really wants to rattle any more cages.
Yeah, and it seems to be so corporatized now. They have a contract that's thicker than the National Enquirer, and very difficult to get in there with anybody without going through 100 lawyers.
Yeah. Okay, my sister does want you to call me back on the cell.
Okay, I'll call you back on the cell. We got a caller. I'm going to hang up on Ted here, and we'll call him right back. And then we'll bring in the caller. Hey, 845, who's calling?
Yeah, Ed, I've got 3 questions for him.
Okay, 1 second. Let me pull him up. Let me get him back. Because it's kind of funny. He's at his sister's house, I guess. And
His sister wears the pants in the family.
Well, did you hear her? She was kind of... How long is this going on for? I don't know. He said 7 o'clock. Now it's going. But he sounds like a really cool guy. He's got all the good info, man.
Hello?
Hey, Ted, how are you? Okay, we got a caller. Caller, what's your name?
Peter.
Peter. Hey, Peter Durant. Okay, you're in the group too. Okay, so what's your questions for Ted?
Well, there's 3 quick questions. You covered the Zapruder film and whether or not the new allegations that it had been tampered with were true or not. You could maybe expand on that. But the real question about the JFK assassination that sort of bothers me is the new information. Well, it's not new, but it's relatively new that Ruby was somehow connected with Nixon. I find that to be disinformation. Then I want to know about May Brussels and Manson, and also why did you call the Laurel Canyon group Wiggy? I think.
Yeah, let's start with that one. Why are we Wiggy?
They seem to be given to a lot of far-out speculation in my mind.
You got an example?
God, I don't know. Maybe one will come to me.
Okay, because
I don't know. The thing about who's the guy that McGowan?
Yeah.
I don't know. He seems to kind of reach, for some, so and so's father was connected to military intelligence. Therefore, that means that we should suspect that he's playing some subversive role when it comes to his rock music or something. I can't really follow it.
Okay.
But I do agree with him when all these people are involved in drugs, but they dance through the raindrops. They don't seem to go to jail behind it. They'll get busted. That part, to me, I find a little more intriguing.
It's interesting how some people can get busted for drugs, you're right, and other people can go their whole life and have an open case, like Timothy Leary. The whole time, his whole public life, the guy had open cases. He was out on bail.
But he did serve time. He was in jail behind it, was he not?
Yeah, and he supposedly he climbed down a telephone wire and escaped. Okay,
and it wasn't like a lot of drugs. It was like a couple of joints or something. So yeah. I don't know if he's the best example to point to.
And G. Gordon Liddy was one of the cops who went and planted that joint.
That's true.
Yeah,
and then they went on the road together. They did a big dog and pony show. But I think that's just what the Americans. It's all about money. So if they can make money, off of each other, they will.
Well, the first time,
but I think that's what that was all about. I don't think you need to make more of it than that.
Well, I'll tell you
this.
I
could be wrong.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you this. When I went down, the first time I ever brought up the name Timothy Leary at Yippee headquarters, the first thing they all said was, "Oh no, man, he's a rat. He's an informant. He's CIA. He's working for them." Right, and that's what the Black Panthers thought too when they kicked him out of Africa.
Well, it could be.
Peter Durant, what other questions you got?
Well,
this is Peter Durant. I know that name.
Yeah, he's cool.
Yeah, I'm on his Facebook friends page. Jack Ruby, was he with Nixon or not?
Oh, good question. I like that question.
Yeah.
I think that is some. Didn't you say before you thought it might be disinformation?
It doesn't jive for me at all.
Apparently, there are several Jack Rubinstein that are linked to one thing or another. Apparently, one was involved in these meetings in Muncie, Indiana. with the communist cell. I'm not clear whether that's the same Jack Rubinstein either, but I don't think that this memo that you're talking about, which supposedly links Jack Ruby to Nixon, I don't think that that's something we can take to the bank as proving a connection.
I agree. It's too.
But there are connections
Incredible.
between the Watergate and JFK. Those connections you can't deny. But I just don't think. And apparently, Roger Stone claims that Maury Chotiner, who is a very suspicious individual, that Maury Chotiner introduced Ruby or told Nixon about Ruby. I just don't really necessarily. I don't think Roger Stone is a credible source.
Wait, you're saying that the memo about Ruby working for the Un-American Activities Committee with the...
I'm not ruling it out, but I think it's there's too many questions that have been raised about it for me to be convinced that we're talking about the same Jack Ruby.
Okay. Because that is sort of a little cesspool in there, too, because Roy Cohn was in that group, and he's working with RFK, and a lot of weird stuff, no?
Well, no. Okay, they both served on the Joe McCarthy committee, but they were big enemies of each other, even at the time.
Okay.
So, that bitterness was a lasting one. And, of course, in the end, Roy Cohn was representing all these organized crime figures that Bobby Kennedy was trying to put in jail.
And Roy Cohn was also hanging out with Roy Reagan.
Oh, wait a minute. What? Now, that's news to me. Roy Cohn is associated with Roy Reagan?
Oh, yeah. Roy Cohn was all hooked up with that whole bunch. Yeah, the whole Process Church out of New York with the Son of Sam. I got to get you involved. I'm going to get you hooked up in a group that I'm in.
Wait, was Roy Cohn their lawyer?
Not lawyer, no. When Roy Cohn was partying at Studio 54 with that bunch.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
That's the same bunch, man.
Wow. See, well, I got a lot to learn.
Yeah, there's a lot. You're only 62. What are you, 62, you said? What was your other...
well, maybe I'll learn. Maybe that's the kind of thing that I'll learn from this Laurel Canyon group that hitherto I hadn't known.
Well, the other group I'm talking about is the Maury Terry group, which goes back to the Son of Sam murders and the Process Church, which hooks up to Roy Reagan, and all that stuff.
And even a murder here at Stanford, where I'm close to. The Arliss Perry murder at the Stanford Memorial Church.
Yes, I do. And Berkowitz said that that was a process killing, and her husband, Arliss Perry's husband. Do you know the story about him?
No.
He was the therapist for the kids at Waco.
For the kids at Waco?
Yes, the kids at Waco.
Okay, well, all right. Well, some of this I want to attribute to the fact that it's, with billions of people, it's a small world after all. But who knows?
Who knows? Peter, what else you got for us, man?
Well, I just wanted to commend Mae Brussels, and I guess you've been fairly close to Mae Brussels. And this Laurel Canyon group, I think, is sort of working theoretically on Mae Brussels' foundation. So I just wanted to praise Mae Brussels,
Yeah.
Calling Manson a patsy. I mean, that was pretty radical at the time, but it's panned out over time. She was, way ahead of the curve.
She was, and her whole methodology of just subscribing to all these mainstream papers mainly, but the way she put it together in such a fashion, it was like anything but mainstream. And she didn't just use mainstream sources, but she was very dependent on them, but she also got, a lot of stuff, whatever was the alternative media at the time, she was getting some of that stuff too. But she was just an amazing researcher, the way she put stuff together. And she, I didn't agree with everything she said. I quarrels with her, but, she just really was a pioneer.
That's interesting you mentioned that, because back in those days, in the 70s and the 80s, I would read, 5-6 newspapers a day, plus Time Magazine, People, all the weekly magazines as well, Life, but now you don't have to, because it's the same exact thing in every single paper. Sometimes
there's very little investigative reporting anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone seems to have sold out. Peter, any other questions?
Yeah, I'm done. Thanks, Ed.
You want to hang out? Hey, let me ask you, what do you guys think about, it always struck me that Geraldo Rivera, okay, again, another one who was hanging out down at Studio 54 when Roy Cohn was and when Michael Jackson was and all that stuff. It's, again, in that mix. And here's Geraldo Rivera. And he does a story about the murder of Marilyn Monroe. And they don't let him put it on. They kind of squash the story, and he kind of disappears for a few years. He quits in disgust. But somehow, in his absence from a weekly TV show, he becomes a billionaire.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that, because remember he had the show, he wasn't on Fox at the time.
Right.
He had the show where he put the Zapruder film on with Robert Grodin in 1975.
Right.
Now, I'm wondering about the Marilyn Monroe program, because if you're talking about the one that involved Cy Hirsch, where they were going to almost went with the story of the phony diary from that guy Xavier, and they got an egg all over their face, but I don't remember that being Geraldo. So I know they either ran that story or they ran it and then had to retract it and admit that the whole thing was phony.
Nope, this was a different story. Geraldo had a story, or has information about Marilyn Monroe that I think he's parlayed into making billions, because Geraldo Rivera has a private island in Puerto Rico. He has a helicopter that takes him.
What the hell?
Yeah.
So you're saying that once he didn't run this story, all of a sudden all this money came his way?
Seems to be.
Or he did run this?
No, he never ran the story. I don't think this story has ever been run. And I know it was silenced, and that's why he quit. And then now suddenly he owns an island. He has a helicopter taking him to work. He owns several newspapers, and pretty much does whatever he wants.
Well, do you know who Jay Margolis is?
Sounds familiar.
He's written the latest Marilyn book.
Okay.
In which he implicates Robert Kennedy and some LAPD people that he claimed that were in on the murder.
What's the name of the book? Is that case closed?
No, it's the Marilyn Monroe murder. He's written 2 books in the last few years.
Okay.
His credibility isn't the best, but I guess my point is that people have come out with all kinds of stories about Marilyn Monroe, whether it was Giancana's people, or whether it was Robert Kennedy, or whether it was the psychiatrist Greenson. I see it as sensitive, but I don't see that somehow that he was able to manipulate this not running the story and parlay it into big untold wealth. I guess that's the part I don't follow.
Okay, well, that's why I'm asking, because it's always fascinated me, because, he went off the radar right after that, and then came back with a gusto, and I just got to wonder how it happened. But on the other hand, too, he was also, during that absence, partying around with the Adnan Khashoggi, on Adnan Khashoggi's yacht. Do you have anything on Adnan Khashoggi?
Yeah, I know about him. Yeah, he's a key player. Yeah. All right, he's a key intriguer. Yeah. So, but it doesn't surprise me because I know about Geraldo. He was into partying. He probably the bigger the name, the better. But you could be right. You could be onto something. I don't know. But now you see him all the time on Fox News, semi-arguing with Bill O'Reilly.
Oh, yeah. No, he's sold out, man. I can't see anybody sold out any more than that. And even when, I know for a fact, because they staged an incident with him and Alex Jones, where he was supposedly... Oh, yeah. He was...
wait a minute. Now, this was very interesting, now that you bring it up.
Yeah.
Remember, for a while there, he was really poo-pooing the 9/11 truthers.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, he decided he got taken in, or he was intrigued by the fall of Building 7, and he put that on his show on Fox. He had a guest on talking about it. So apparently he had a turnaround where he wasn't putting them down anymore. So I think it may be a little more complicated than you make out.
Interesting. Okay, I never saw that one. But I know one time he was doing a live street broadcast, and coincidentally, Alex Jones and a bunch of protesters just happened to show up behind him and start chanting. And the way the whole scene was lit, and I know how the street security, for a live broadcast works. There's no way these guys could just show up right behind him and he's debating with them, and suddenly, they're all mic'd. The whole thing was staged, man. Like up the wazoo. with Alex Jones.
So it was a confrontation between the two?
Yeah, and Alex Jones is like right there in the middle, and the light's hitting him right in his face, and he's shouting back and forth. And Geraldo's not a very good actor, you know. And even when you watch him on The Apprentice with Donald Trump, you know, he's not a very good actor. And he's going, "Oh, these are miscreants and anarchists, the worst I've ever seen." it was so bad, you know. It was just pathetic, and that always stuck in my head too. So I don't trust that guy at all. Okay. Oh boy. Emery did a lot of work on Maury Terry's book. Did you guys ever get into that?
I only know basically from following Dave Emery and stuff. I have never read the book myself.
Okay. How'd you wind up living with him?
Well, that's a good question. I don't really know. We both lived in the same area, and I was supplying him with articles for his show, and I guess we both sort of were looking for a place to live around the same time, and so we decided to try living together, and it was all very interesting.
Yeah.
He's a bigger slob than me, and that's pretty hard to do.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what I would say, but you can also drink and smoke more than me. That's pretty hard to do. Well, the smoking part, anyway. But anyway, yeah, but I liked him at the time, and we got along well, but then I think he started to get a little more out there. And he would say things about people behind their back, and he seemed to become a rather disagreeable individual.
Yeah. Well, it's a tough
and yet
game.
He didn't. And then I don't really know all this stuff about the Mae Brussels archives. That seemed to involve a lot of personality clashes and ego and charges that people were ripping off money, and I never knew what to make of it all. But what I did know is that I didn't trust Dave Emery's account of what was going down.
Right.
You know, he seemed to be making enemies of people like John Judge, and I didn't understand what that was about.
What was your opinion of?
And then I heard that he was even saying things about Mae Brussels behind her back.
Oh, really?
I mean, she was dead by then, but I didn't want to believe that. But what I knew about him was, I didn't, it seemed plausible to me that he would be saying, even criticizing Mae Brussels that, later on, which he wouldn't have done. He wouldn't do that on the air. But then I can't really comfortable talking about it but I have an unreliable source, so that's why I'm mentioning it. But yeah, I mean, all of these. I like John Judge, even though I knew Dave Emery better than I knew John Judge. But what I came to learn about Dave Emery's character really started to disturb me after a while.
Well, we all have flaws. No one's a saint.
Absolutely,
Absolutely.
We're all human. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what about Alex Constantine? What do you make of all of that?
He was another one that Dave Emery decided to make an enemy of, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I didn't know Dave and I didn't know Constantine, but I just knew some of his work, and I had no reason to criticize him. And I just why are people picking all these fights with people? Isn't there room for all of us?
Yeah, that's a good question too, man. There's so much backbiting and talking about each other, and so much of that stuff. Especially when you get into the whole thing with Ted Gunderson. Forget it. Everyone's my God. They're at war. The guy's been dead for what, 7 years? And everyone's still...
Or even the JFK thing. There's all this fighting about Judith Baker. What does it matter one way or the other whether she's telling the truth or she's making it up? Move on to the more important material, but. So many people get hung up on that one way or the other.
Well, with Judith Baker, it does kind of concern me because if people are putting her stuff out there, I don't know, man. I get a little nervous.
She defriended me because I didn't like enough of her comments.
Oh, really?
Oh my God. Yeah.
I tried to get her on the show.
But I try to stay clear of that whole thing.
So do I.
Yeah.
I'm trying. Oh God. So
I'm wondering if Ted knew Norman Mailer.
Oh, interesting.
No, but I did read Oswald's Gate. What was that book that he wrote?
It was about Oswald's life when he was in Russia, when he was in Minsk.
Yeah, I read that. That's really all the familiarity I have with him. And I found that book interesting, but, he seemed to basically want to make out that Oswald was a spy in his own mind, and that's as far as it went. And I don't think that the answer is that simplistic.
I got a funny Norman Mailer story.
Go.
It was in the 80s, and I pick up the newspaper one day, and I read a small article that says that Norman Mailer was involved in a deal to import 100,000 pounds of hash.
What?
Yes. And he was questioned by the DEA and the FBI, and he explained to them that, oh no, I'm just researching a book, and I'm not really planning on importing all this hash. And they dropped the charges, and it all went away. And guys, try and look it up and see if you can find it, because I've looked for this, man. And I got to tell you something else. I think I know who he was talking to this deal with. Okay. And by the way, Geraldo, the same thing. He did the same thing. He did a show.
Maybe it was the Ganja Godfather.
I don't know about that. But you want to know something funny, too? Speaking of Ganja Godfather, too, that guy Ebele,
I'm going to ask you about him.
Yeah.
How does Norman Mailer go through being a non-drug trafficker to then doing a deal which involves 100,000 pounds of hash? That's quite some jump.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if it was 100,000 pounds, but it was a huge hash deal coming in from the Middle East, Afghanistan, I think it was. And
wow.
and somehow he says, no, I'm researching a book. All the charges were dropped, and it's scrubbed. It's scrubbed from the internet. You can't find it. Because I've looked.
So you can't even find it if you look it up.
I've looked for it. I can't find it because I'd love to go back and hear this story again. The other thing too was, but Geraldo did the same kind of thing where he went with his news crew to Afghanistan and negotiated a big heroin deal as well. You saw that,
Who
right?
did?
Geraldo Rivera.
No, I just knew Geraldo. I thought that the Alex Jones runs this thing of talking to the troops about guarding the opium field. I don't know anything about a big dope deal that he was trying to negotiate.
Yeah, but before we invaded Afghanistan, this is way before that. This is like back in the 80s. Geraldo did a story where he says, okay, I'm going to go to Afghanistan and negotiate a big heroin deal. But I'm not going to go through with it. I'm just going to go there and negotiate and film it all, and put it on 2020 or whatever show it was. And stuck in my mind as well.
I need to look that one up.
Yeah, I think that should be easy to find. The Norman Mailer one, I don't think you'd be able to find that.
I do remember the one where he did, I don't know which organized crime family it was, the Gaudis, but it was something about organized crime in New York, and he goes, these people are scumbags, ladies and gentlemen.
What a character.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a character, right? I went to one of his shows when he was doing that talk show, like that tabloid talk show. I went there one time, and it was about people cheating on each other and stuff like that. It was, and then right before the show starts, they got like all these little empty seats plugged everywhere, and like all these models come in, and they seat them down in these different spots, Oh my God!
Well, who are they?
Models.
Oh, okay.
They brought
that fits.
Yeah, they brought in like 10 beautiful young girls to come in and sit in different spots, in the audience.
Oh, wow.
Well, okay, well, let's think. What else?
Yeah, he's quite a character.
Yeah, he really is, man. And he's one of those guys. I'd love to get a hold of him and find out what the hell's going on there. Because he was hanging out, too, with Michael Jackson at Studio 54. And Michael Jackson's sister, LaToya, said that at that time, that Michael Jackson would come home with a baby's diaper with fresh poop in it. After
that was his fetish?
That was one of the things. Yeah, he would come home with a baby's diaper, with freshly soiled baby's diaper, after partying all night at Studio 54.
Okay, now you mentioned LaToya Jackson.
Yeah.
She's involved with this guy named Jack Gordon.
Jack Gordon, yeah. Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
He's rumored to be involved in these mob murders in Las Vegas, but he was never charged.
Oh, my goodness. No way. That's outrageous. I could never believe that. Yeah, he had all these partners.
I heard this before the Internet.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
kidding. No, he had a bunch of partners. He owned a chain of massage parlors. All of his partners died. Every partner this guy's ever had has died. Then he made a payoff to Harry Reid. And Harry Reid's wife's car was blown up, and Harry Reid suspected it was Jack Gordon.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
When was the car bombing?
Oh, back in the 80s.
Because now that you know about the latest incident with Harry Reid being beaten up by the mob.
Yeah, I see the beating. I know that. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I wonder what's going on with that. That's interesting because Vegas is a weird town. This is an incredible town.
But according to your information, Jack Gordon is somehow linked to Harry Reid?
Oh, absolutely. That's on Wikipedia. You can find that.
So is he involved in an organized crime nexus of possibly Jews?
Jack Gordon?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jack Gordon was a pimp and a gangster, no doubt about that. He's dead now. I just did an interview with the what's that guy named? Dennis Hoff from the Bunny Ranch.
Yes.
I just interviewed him, and he knew Jack Gordon very well. We talked about Jack Gordon for a good 5-10 minutes. All this stuff. There's no doubt about any of this about Jack Gordon.
But you didn't hear about these murders that he's supposedly linked to?
Oh, yeah. Every one of his partners died. Oh. He had a string.
I see. They died, but it wasn't necessarily natural causes.
Oh, no, I can't imagine. They were, the going into...
Well, anyway, I mentioned this. I mentioned that on that page. I said, does anyone know anything about Jack Gordon on the roll? I got no responses.
I didn't see it. I'm not on there all day long, man. I can only do so much.
Okay.
Yeah, but he's one of my favorite topics. Jack Gordon is one of my favorite
topics.
Yeah,
I'm really interested in him, but no one, as I've said, a few people seem to know about him, but you do.
Oh, no, yeah. And I'm getting in more and more with Dennis Hoff. He knows all these guys, too. One of these guys I'm going to be interviewing from prison is Scott Thorson, the boyfriend of Liberace. Yeah, I'm interviewing him from prison coming up. And Dennis Hoff is putting all that together for me. He's hooking me up with Heidi Fleiss, too.
Heidi Fleiss.
The Hollywood Madam.
Yeah. Yeah. Who was her father now?
He was a plastic surgeon, I believe. And he was put in...
I thought it was Peter Boner's son, Eric Boner's. Remember Peter Boner from the Newhart show?
I know the name, yeah. Which one?
Boners.
What?
They went to the same high school. Eric Boner's, Peter Boner's son, and Heidi Fleiss. He talked about Heidi Fleiss. He knew her when they were kids.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
well, she's wealthy neighborhood.
All right, so it's not that she didn't get into it through her father. She just got into the kind of ways you do when you're hooked up to the whole LA scene, I guess.
Well, I'll tell you some stuff about Heidi Fleiss, man. Is she's always been attracted to guys like in their 60s, you know? And how she got into all of this is up for question. But she definitely knows where some bodies are buried. And how she wound up where she wound up is beyond me. I don't know.
But now she's all into parrots and stuff. I like that.
Yep, and I tell you, still gets in trouble. She was growing marijuana there in her little prump.
And she probably still likes her meth. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I hear too. Yeah, I ran into her one time going into a Home Depot, and I tried to talk to her. There was just no hope. But now I got through Dennis Hoff. Dennis Hoff is hooking me up. I ran into LaToya Jackson too one time too, who is stunningly beautiful in person. You know, and she had a brand new brown Mercedes car. And her outfit was like brand new, beautiful outfit. She was coming out of the dry cleaners. Beautiful. Not with that stupid, sailor's cap that you always see her on TV. Yeah.
Wow. But so now you're in Nevada. You're not in New York anymore.
Nope. Left New York. I came to Nevada in 2000. So I'm out here now and doing what I can. Trying to get the show on the road. Did you follow
the Teddy Binion case?
Absolutely. I had a little tiny piece of the Teddy Binion case because in the appeal, we tried to file for an appeal. I caught one of the jurors on Court TV message board, posting on the Court TV message board. And this was way back in 2000. And I tried to present that to the judge and to the... but the judge, he actually said, we had a hearing, and he said, oh, anybody can hack into these accounts and make up anything they want. You know, because it was 2000. You know, people weren't that savvy about internet and stuff like that. But I put
was it the same judge in both trials?
Yeah, Bonaventure. Yeah, and you know, interesting too. You know, Ted Gunderson was involved.
Because I watched that on Court TV, I was really into it.
So was I.
For a variety of reasons.
Yeah, so were we, man. We were totally into
I love the way Bodden says you can't die from smoking too much black tar heroin. There you go.
Yeah, you want to know what though, man? Hey, I'll tell you a couple of interesting things about that case. Sig Rogage, you familiar with him?
Remind me. The name rings a bell.
Sig Rogage is a big, powerful guy. He runs political campaigns. He lives here in Vegas. They gave him a building. You know, the city of Vegas just gave him a building, you know, as a gift. I don't know how the hell that happened. Okay, but that's a whole other story. But he was hired as a PR company by the Binion family to trash Sandy Murphy and the boyfriend. I forget his name. But also too, you know, Ted Gunderson was involved in that case too, as well. You know,
on which side?
Ted Gunderson went to work for Sandy Murphy, and I was.
Of course, you see, there again, he's on the wrong side as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, really?
I wanted them convicted on that case.
You think so?
I had little. What was your stance on it? Did you think that they should have been acquitted?
Well, you know what, man. I think that if it was a regular case, I don't think they never would have got convicted. You know, if it wasn't for.
I mean, they had a lot of money behind them, so they could generate a lot of.
Yeah, well, they gave
generate a trial.
Yeah, there was a PI out here. They gave him a $1 million reward that if he could get a conviction on the case. He was a former homicide detective, and they paid him $1 million if they're going to get an arrest and a conviction in this case. But also,
what about all the Birking and the imprint of the button on his chest?
Yeah, I was
really convinced by the thing that he was a very cautious drug user, and that maybe he might have mixed the Xanax with the heroin, but not enough to kill him.
Well, just stop and think, man. Whatever trial have you ever watched on TV, ever, or any case, anything?
Well, I grant your point. If you're a dope fiend, basically, they don't. That's the end of it. If you're a dope fiend, you killed yourself. So that part I'll grant. That if he didn't have a bunch of money, if he wasn't a binion, it wouldn't have been brought to trial. But I think we need to go past that part of the equation.
How about where they had the heroin dealer, the Mexican heroin dealer, on the stand, and the little caption under his name says "heroin dealer." When's the last time you ever saw that? Hey, but you want to know a funny story?
Well, I don't know if he was dealing heroin after that point. But I think he was white. I don't think he was Mexican. But anyway,
I think he was Mexican.
Huh? But hey, murder's a bigger charge than dealing heroin.
But if I sold you heroin, you died from it. That's a murder charge.
It depends on the jurisdiction.
Yeah, I know, but I think that would have been a better. I think that would have been a better charge than this whole theory.
But they didn't prove. See, they certainly didn't prove that he died because the guy sold him the heroin and it was in a self-administered overdose. That was the whole purpose of the trial.
Yeah, I follow that. Yeah, but I also don't believe that. And really, the only reason why I forget the guy's name, the boyfriend.
But now he had a lot of interesting connections himself back in whatever. He wasn't exactly, not unconnected before he met up with the Teddy Binion.
No,
he had connections back in whatever state was it, Montana. Yeah, I even called up the reporter in Montana. Yeah, he was from Montana, and he had some suspicious connections back there.
Oh no, yeah. No, they all had suspicious.
And then the whole thing about the gold, the silver rather, where he said, "I called the sheriff to tell him I'd be excavating the silver," but they arrested him anyway, despite that story.
Yeah, but
it was a fascinating case.
I believe that story, by the way, that he did contact the sheriff and say he was digging up the silver. But did you know that Ted Gunderson was working on that case for Sandy Murphy, and you know who got him thrown off the case?
Who?
Stu Webb.
Stu Webb told us, Andy Murphy, hey, you don't know who you're dealing with?
No, Stu Webb contacted the DA's office and told them that Ted Gunderson wasn't licensed in the state of Nevada. And there was a huge surprise hearing. No one, I was there at the court that day. No one knew this was coming. And suddenly, it was a hearing about throwing Ted Gunderson off the case. Ted Gunderson wasn't even there that day.
That to me seems like, he was chasing an ambulance. Because, I never heard, I read a book about it, and as I said, I followed it in court TV, and I never seen his name associated with it. It sounds like he was just trying to make a buck off, getting associated with it as a PI.
No, yeah, he did a lot of that, but everyone does. Okay, but the thing is, too, I can't, listen, I'm more guilty of that than anybody. I insert myself to every case that's out there. But I'm talking to Sidney Leathers, what do you call it? He was invited into that case. Sandy Murphy had a benefactor who has a mining company out here. I remember heard that rich guy that was backing her. I forget his name now. I forget his name too.
So he brought Ted Gunderson into it?
He brought Ted Gunderson into it.
Well, I'm sure Gunderson made the first overture, though. Well, I would think so.
He had,
unless they follow the conspiracy community, how would they know about him otherwise?
You're right, because Gunderson had a reputation in the conspiracy community, but in the PI community, he was kind of known as, like you said, like an ambulance chaser kind of guy.
Mm-hmm. His big thing was the child molestation, right? The Franklin cover-up, all the McMartin preschool. That was basically his claim to fame initially.
The first one was Jeff McDonald.
Yes.
Right. Yes. Now, you want to hear something interesting about that, okay? Because I did a show with Catherine McDonald, Jeff McDonald's husband, and we're going to be doing a series of shows on that. I'm going to be talking to Jeff McDonald from prison. But what happened with that was Gunderson retired from the FBI. That was his first big case, was Jeff McDonald. Now, and then
after he retired, yeah.
Right, and that was at Fort Bragg, Virginia. Fort Bragg is in Virginia, right? Wherever Fort Bragg is. North Carolina. There you go. Sorry. Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And the whole thing about the Jeff McDonald case, think about this, was that it was this cult, this hippie cult that went in there, like a Manson-type cult, a drug cult, a witchcraft cult. And Ted Gunderson got a hold of this witness, I forget her name right now, and he controlled this witness. Now, who was stationed down at that Fort Bragg base at the same exact time? Colonel Michael Aquino. Yeah. And you want to know what? When I talked to Catherine McDonald, they don't even know about that whole angle, and Gunderson, and all of that.
Well, when did Gunderson hook up with him that early, or you haven't established that yet?
I don't know.
That's fascinating, though.
Isn't it?
Nate Bussell was in all that stuff, Aquino, before anyone else was.
And right, and back in those days, he was pretty flamboyant. He was going on Oprah and stuff,
Yeah.
Yeah, he's making sort of another tour right now. Another interesting thing too about Aquino is the one who cleared him of all those charges over there at the Presidio was Rudolph Giuliani.
Really?
Yeah, he's the one that went over there and gave him the clean bill of health.
So it went up to a national level where Rudolph Giuliani had ruled on it.
No, not official. They brought him in, as a special investigator, a special prosecutor, investigator type guy, to bring him in there, And
the government has basically decided that Satanism is all good for the U.S. military.
Well, you know what? Did you know that Aquino wrote the chaplain manual for all of the military? That whether you're a Muslim, a Jew, a Christian, whatever, you have to use his manual on how to, service people with their chaplaincy.
It's amazing.
It is amazing,
I see why people get carried away with the paranoid, the very ultra paranoid view of things, and I try to resist that. But sometimes it's hard to do.
I'm trying to resist it too.
It's so in your face.
Yeah, I know. It is so in our face, and it seems to be getting more in our face every year,
Yeah, I agree.
Oh boy. So we're down to We're down to 5 minutes. What have we left out that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I don't know. I think I'm always like to go back to the drug connection.
Yeah.
Because that seems to be a trail that runs through so much of this. I mean, it's really hard to say that it's definitely connected to, let's say, 9/11 or to the JFK assassination, but the tentacles there are tentacles that run all the way through, and it also seems to be, and this Indira Singh was pointing out in a lecture, I don't know if she's the one who exposed PTEC, that they'll talk about the fact, like Chertoff talks about, where you can't separate the terrorist financing from the financing from the terrorism from the drugs. Like they'll concede that in a general sense that's where the problem is. But when specific whistleblowers come forward to address just that, they're always shut down because that's really too sensitive. The black money, the fact that the drug money is props up all the banks, and that's what saved us from the 2008 recession being even worse than it was. That came out in mainstream newspapers. So ultimately, the most important thing is the money keeps flowing, whether it's dirty or not, and even if it means we have to put up with terrorism, addiction on a worldwide scale, all that stuff, it's all secondary to propping up the banks with dirty money.
Yeah, and it goes back to the opium trade, back with the pirates and the queen and all, it's not like these people that were trading in opium back in those days said, well, you know what, we've made enough money. Well, let's go do something else. It's the same people, and nothing stopped. And then now it's just coke and heroin and everything else too. But, drugs, you're right, drugs and alcohol and tobacco, and all that stuff. And it always goes back to it every single time.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Long night. I don't know, man.
But
yeah, go ahead.
They need to take the profit out of it. Yeah. That's why, drugs should be decriminalized. That money should be used to combat addiction and stuff, and to reduce the deficit. All that money should be put to good use, because people are going to use drugs anyway. But the corruption that it has now, that it's had for decades on our society, is mind-blowing.
Yeah, it really is, man. I don't think there's anything goes any further. The corruption around drugs is about as far as you can get.
Mm-hmm.
All right, want to thank my guest, Ted Rubinstein, fascinating guy, historical perspective on all this great stuff we talked about tonight. I want to thank Peter Durant for calling in again. Next week is the big show we're doing with about Obama being CIA and about the visas being handed out to these what do you call it? These Muslim extremists in the Mideast and stuff like that. Tune in, man. Don't laugh at me, Ted.
I'll be sure to tune in. That's for sure.
Yeah, check that out, man. And then I want to
call in.
Definitely call in, man. Call in anytime you want. I'd love to have you. This is great stuff.
I really appreciate this. I'm glad you saw that I'd make a good guest. I hope I did. I really enjoyed this.
Oh, no, you're great, man. You're great. Call in anytime, man. You kidding me? And anything, you got something to plug or whatever, you want to do a special show, let me know. You're working on something, let me know, man. For sure.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
And what do you call it? Don't forget, guys, the member section, okay? Check out the member section. That show I just did yesterday with Neil Sanders, that'll be up really, really soon. And I got a whole bunch of shows coming up I'm going to be doing the next couple of weeks about in the member section. So that's what keeps us going. Good night, Awake Radio. Thank you very much. Good night, Ted Rubinstein, and Peter Durant. Thank you all. I'll talk to you guys next week.